Welcome, Sophia.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm sharing the platform with Tim and with Farhad, with Jackie, and to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with you on the questions that preoccupy us tonight: hunger, equity, and the protection of the fragile ecosystems on which we all depend for our survival. Will the world be able to feed itself in 2050? 2050 is still 42 years away. I'm young enough just to think that that's a long time. As Keynes said, in the long run, we're all dead. I might be dead, but my children won't be, I hope, and they may well have children too. And I think we all share a sense that the ethical responsibility that Tim talked about, that our responsibility is not just to those with whom we share the planet now, but also with those who will come after us. That responsibility is an important part of what gives our life meaning, I think, and it's an important part of what should inform our decisions. To me, it matters that all of those who are alive in 2050 live free from hunger, all of them. The question is, how can we make it happen? We need goals. 42 years is a big project. If we look back 42 years, we find some inspiration. 42 years ago, in 1966, governments adopted the UN Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, a document that included the universal right to freedom from hunger. We have not yet realized a world free from hunger, but the world's parliaments have ratified that document and thereby pledged themselves to the realization of the human right to food. Indeed, the world's governments have gone on setting targets. At the World Food Conference held in Rome in 1974, governments pledged to eradicate child hunger in 1 decade. In 1996, at the World Food Summit, governments settled for halving the number of people living with hunger by 2015, and they renewed that commitment in the year 2000 by making it one of the Millennium Development Goals. So we need goals, and we have goals, but clearly goals alone are not enough. In 2008, we confront not just the broken promises of goals not met, but also a world in which keeping our promises has gotten a lot harder. This year's food crisis reminds us how fragile the global food system really is. The crisis has revealed the decrepit state of dozens of national food systems around the world. And it's not just developing countries that are vulnerable. We are too. I'm not suggesting that we're about to see food riots in Adelaide streets. I don't wish to compare what's happening in rich countries with the desperation that has descended on countries like Ethiopia or Haiti. But many of Australia's agricultural practices are wholly unsustainable. The system squanders water. It depends on inputs like inorganic fertilizer that show diminishing returns and poison the soil. The system is destroying biodiversity, as Farhad has just shown, and it destroys soil health. It depends on too narrow a range of plant varieties and livestock breeds to sustain us in a world where our ecosystem and our climate is becoming more and more unpredictable. Clearly, we need a better strategy if we're going to meet our goals. Here's one plan. Liberalize world agricultural markets, end subsidies to inefficient producers, tear down tariff walls, end public stockholding. This would allow world market supplies to move to where the need is greatest, or more accurately, where the price is the highest, which is not, of course, quite the same thing. World prices for agricultural commodities would rise, which would be good for the farmers who are profitable in the deregulated markets. Environmental efficiencies would be gained by concentrating production where there is greatest comparative advantage. And private companies would be able to manage the business of getting food from where it is grown to where it is needed, cutting significant costs out of public budgets in those countries where the state used to play all or some of that role. This is the vision that has driven negotiators at the World Trade Organization. This is the vision behind the WTO's Agreement on Agriculture. This is the vision of recent Australian governments, be they Liberal or Labour. It is not a vision that persuades me. Let me say clearly, I don't believe trade is the key to food security. Trade does not merit the importance it is given by diplomats and economists and even some NGOs in their deliberations on food security. More precisely, while trade rules are part of the problem, and better trade rules will have to be part of the solution, trade is not the right place to start to build food security. Trade is a tool, a useful tool, even a vital tool, but except for the rarest of cases, it's not a foundation for development. Trade among equals can make everyone better off, but trade across the disparities that mar our world has tended to make the rich richer, and also in some countries more numerous, but the poor have faced much worse problems, have faced worsened conditions, and they now compete in a global marketplace to even grow food on their own half-hectare or less of land. For Australia, a country of few people, considerable wealth, and great growing conditions, trading food is a way to make money, to buy other things. Countries like Australia are part of a very small group of countries worldwide, with New Zealand, Argentina, the United States, Canada, Brazil, some parts of the former Soviet Union, USSR, like the Ukraine. They're countries whose capacities to produce agricultural commodities exceeds their domestic needs by a wide margin. For these countries, trade in agricultural commodities is a strategy to make the country richer, and indeed, for much of the last century, these countries have been among the richest in the world. But then there are the countries that can ill afford to import food, but whose domestic capacity to grow food is so disrupted.